Mahe and I favor nothing missing, nothing broken, nothing absent from your lives that are needed. I'm a couple of minutes late, and I'm actually a few hours late, but I have been feeling pretty rough today. Uh, See, I even got my hair pulled up today. Anyway, so this is going to be a long one. So if you're watching this on replay, I suggest you go to 1.25 or 1.5 speed. If you're with me, I'm going to go as fast as I possibly can because I don't feel well. All right. So, first thing that we need to go over is years ago, if you don't know who Kissinger is, and unfortunately, a lot of people who listen to me are under 40 and they don't have any idea or understanding what Kissinger was about. But Kissinger was connected to Epstein, he was connected to the bankers, he's connected to all this, okay? But Kissinger said when it becomes easier to kill a million people than to control a million people, then we'll just kill them. All right? That's the mentality that we're dealing with. Same mentality. All right. Something I need to point out, for some reason, American and Western media are talking about oil prices being somewhere around $90. I just looked, and it's running between 100 and 120, and that's spot. That's, actual price. And then the futures, depending on what you're looking at, it's between 94 and 110. So I'm going to go ahead and do this now and get it over with. Back here on this page, they're all talking about oil reserves. Okay, I did a whole bunch of podcasts and I did a couple of gratuities about resources. The oil reserves being able to offset the problems is a bold-faced lie. Okay, first things first, a percentage of those oil reserves are reserved for military use and emergency use. All right, so a lot of people don't understand that. Second thing is like here in the United States, we've got about 430 million barrels. Sounds like a lot, right? Oh, we got 400 million barrels. Or some places say that they have 500 million barrels. All right. That sounds like a lot of oil. But what they don't tell you is that here in the United States, we go through 21 million barrels a day. So if you take their terminology, and you have to remember what I said, not all of that strategic reserve is available for public use, right? But if you take, you got to think about that. That's the strategic reserve was set up for military use originally. Anyway, so if you take the 400 million that they have, and we use 21 million a day, you got about a 20-day supply. That's it. That's it. So that's out of the way. I don't have to go back and talk about that again. All right. So I said oil prices are between 100 and 120. The futures are now running between 94 and 110. But you have to understand that lie about oil reserves being available affects the market. That, and I noticed that the futures trading seem to be manipulated. If you look at the numbers, they're keeping the prices down artificially. I look at about 150 per barrel by Friday. When I started this a week ago Saturday, I said that we would be at $100 by the end of the week, and we were. I fully expect that we will be at 150 or higher by this Friday. There's no way around it. Everybody on the news in the United States and Western media are saying that the Iranians are shooting fewer and fewer missiles. Okay, if that's the case, then why have they increased their missile launches by 100% and they've increased their drone launches by 20%? That's not fewer. The United States right now is rating its allies. It's rating its strategic storage. Strategic, that means in case of somebody attacking the United States. Okay, I'm not giving away any information. It's out there, so I don't feel bad. But anyway, the United States is rating its allies like South Korea and Japan and Taiwan and others. It's rating its allies. It's rating strategic storage, and it's rating the reserve storage of ordnance. And some of that stuff, specifically the reserve storage, is supposed to be for U.S. mainland defense. That's in case we get attacked. And they're raiding it too. Unfortunately, it's not going to replace the missiles. What they're going to end up with is JDAMs. Those are glide bombs. So if they're going to raid the strategic storage and reserve storage for military equipment, they're going to get a lot of JDAMs, glide bombs, and things like that. They're not going to be getting uh, these high range SAMs and these Patriot batteries. I mean, they're already on Pat 2. They've run out of Pat 3. And THAADs, um, unfortunately, the command at the Pentagon should refuse to allow them to get into the strategic and reserve storage, right? I mentioned yesterday about Iraq. I'm going to tell you again. The United States and the British Protectorate in Palestine attempted to put mobile radars in the area in Iraq. They were engaged and they were repelled. And I don't know how many casualties there were. All right. I'm trying to be as neutral as I can on this. But I have to tell you that when they're sacrificing American troops for insanity, it's really hard for me to remain passive and level. I'm angry. I'm even more angry than normal. Anyway, so the United States and the British Protectorate in Palestine tried to insert mobile radar stations in Iraq. They were attacked. I do not know how many are dead, but we do know that there are POWs, which nobody's talking about. All right. We know that there are POWs, and nobody in the West are talking about it. I told you I do my job, I do it thoroughly, right? So, I told you I'm not feeling great. Anyway, so if you've never seen it, it's free on YouTube. If you've never seen it, I've been going for about 7 minutes. You missed some important stuff at the beginning because I'm going as fast as I can. Anyway, if you've never seen it, there's a free documentary on YouTube. I think it's 3 parts. I've seen it before, but it's called Praying for Armageddon. Okay. I think anybody who listens to me, especially if you heard my podcast about changes in religion, these are the days of our lives last night. Um, Praying for Armageddon is a documentary, and I think that anybody who listens to me might want to pay attention to it, might want to watch it. Okay. So that's covered. I'm trying to mark this stuff off and go as fast as I can. Okay. Um, Water desalination is offline in one section of Iran. It was intentionally targeted. It's another war crime. So, in response to that, because Qatar and Saudi Arabia allowed the United States military to fly through there and attack that desalination plant, a war crime, Iran did respond and they hit the Qatari and the Saudi Arabian plants. Um, what can you say? They were attacked without provocation, and now they're attacking their water. They told everybody, if you do this, we will respond. Well, Qatar and Saudi Arabia allowed the United States to fly through their airspace and attack the water plant in Iran. Iran responded. Okay. Um, I want to point out something. Everybody is looking to Turkey, and they're unsure about what Erdogan in Turkey is going to do. I will tell you what Erdogan in Turkey is going to do. I saw the photographs of him with the Zionist Council out of the British Protectorate in Palestine signing some kind of an agreement. I do not know what the agreement was, but the Zionists who met him and signed the paperwork with him seemed very, very happy. And that's happened last summer. Okay. Erdogan, I have told you many, many times if you've listened to my podcasts, that Erdogan is for Erdogan and Turkey. The problem that Erdogan doesn't understand is that if he assists in the destruction of Iran, they've already told him he's next. He thinks that NATO is going to save Turkey if they're attacked. How many NATO nations are involved in trying to destroy Iran right now? Erdogan doesn't have a chance unless he stands up right now. Same thing with Egypt. Egypt has been in some serious trouble the last 48 hours. All right, next. Um, Where am I at? It says, I have heard this from Rubio and Hegseth. If you want to know who's running Rubio and Hegseth and Trump, I have heard this said. And I haven't been well, y'all. I've just been getting this stuff as fast as I can. I have heard Rubio and Hegseth both say the United States military is meeting the Israeli goals, not the American goals. The United States is meeting the Israeli goals. And that's from Rubio and Hegseth. That is our Secretary of War and Secretary of State. When they are saying that we are meeting the Israeli goals, not the American goals, it makes it pretty obvious now, doesn't it? All right. Apparently, Bibi Melikowski is still in Berlin using green screen behind him, while everybody else in the British Protectorate in Palestine are being bombed. Typical. Except for the wealthiest that fled. Civilian employees who are not Zionists are not being allowed to use the bunkers in the British Protectorate of Palestine. They are actually being turned away from the bunkers. I'm talking about civilian employees who are not Zionists, so foreign contractors, foreign nationals, Christians, right? And Torah following Jews are being turned away from the bunkers. There are allegations that the IDF soldiers shot two foreign nationals who attempted to go into the bunkers and refused to leave. Cannot prove it, but I have heard it from multiple sources, one inside Israel, which I hope he doesn't get caught, because do you know what the British Protectorate in Palestine has done? If you are caught showing footage of the destruction in the British Protectorate, or if you're showing footage of the atrocities that the IDF is committing on its own people, or showing footage of what they're doing in Lebanon, you can be jailed for 14 years. That is how strict they are about censorship of what they're doing and what's happening. The British Protectorate in Palestine has issued a statement that if you are caught releasing footage of anything that they don't like, you can be jailed for 14 years. All right, next page. I'm going to go as fast as I can, y'all, because I do not feel good. The U.S. and Europe will be taxed to build. Actually, the United States and Europe will be taxed to rebuild the British Protectorate in Palestine. Okay, they've said this openly. It will require a reduction in benefits, like retirement. It will require austerity measures, which means reduction in all the benefits that people get for paying their taxes. It's going to probably increase your tax base requirements. In the United States, they said it wouldn't be a problem if the retirement age was raised in order to raise the money necessary to rebuild the British Protectorate in Palestine. How do you like that? Any of you out there as old as I am? It wouldn't be out of the range to possibly increase the retirement age for Americans so that the money could be raised to rebuild the British Protectorate in Palestine. They're actually saying this out loud, y'all. I said it already, the futures manipulation we saw before the war started, and the manipulations that I saw in tracking it on multiple sites today. What I did is I set it up to record it and play it back to me. I'm pretty daggone sure we're going to see $150 a barrel oil this week, if not 200. But if this goes more than this week, once it hits a certain point, all right, right now that trajectory looks like this. Not like this, not like this, although there was a drop. The trajectory on oil prices looks like this. When it hits a certain point and a certain panic, it'll go like this. All right? Don't take my word for it. There's a lot of people out there talking about it. Just find somebody who is an oil expert. They had one on Breaking Point today. Okay? So if you want somebody who's better at it than me, he's a specialist in oil trade. He was on Breaking Point, but I know history. I'm old enough to know history, and I studied what happened with the 78-79 issue with OPEC and right before the Iraq War. I was wide awake when the Iraq War started, and I saw what happened with oil prices. You know, during the Iraq War, I think it got to 100 and a quarter. And then in 07 and 08, I think it hit 150 for a couple of days before they were able to reap it back in after making their profits. But here's the thing. We're at $100 now, and today it kind of looked like this. Okay. They keep trying to say that $100 oil is 8 or 12% increase. Y'all, I got a high IQ and I'm really good at math. If you went from 65 to 100, isn't that more like 70%? Just saying. Okay. So, Pakistan has openly condemned the attacks. So anybody who's telling you that Pakistan is this or that or the other, the Pakistani government came out and openly condemned the unprovoked attack on Iran. All right. As a matter of fact, millions in the streets. They're really irate about the assassination of the Ayatollah. They said that since 2024, this is Pakistan, since 2024, any war against Iran should be prevented to keep it from becoming a regional problem. They joined the Board of Peace hoping that they could end. Now, everybody says, oh, well, they joined the Board of Peace. That means that Pakistan was on board. No. If you actually listen to the representatives instead of the mouthpieces from Washington, D.C., Pakistan joined the Board of Peace hoping that they could end the genocide in Palestine. They've said it openly and they've written it. This is a regional war right now already, and it won't take much to make it a global war. All right. We're back to this propaganda and rhetoric rhyming crap again. Do y'all remember when all the television stations across the United States said that free speech, that's my input, free speech free speech is dangerous to our democracy? Do you remember that was on all? If you haven't seen it, just type in danger to our democracy, and you'll see hundreds and hundreds of local television people saying the same thing. Right? But I inserted my part. Free speech is a danger to their democracy, not our republic. Okay? So now they've got a new one that they put out. It's called Short-Term Pain for Long-Term Gain. I don't know who writes these slogans, but they need to be slapped upside the head. So get ready to hear that for the next week. Well, the short-term pain of high gas prices is the short-term pain of high gas prices is better for our long-term gain. People are already paying $1.50 more a gallon in some places. I know some people that can't afford it. $1.50 a gallon is going to make them choose between going to work and paying for groceries. All right. One thing I will say right now is if you have a home with electric HVAC, turn your heat down and make sure you don't turn your air conditioning all the way up, because natural gas is getting hit too. And a lot of people in this country think about coal-fired power plants, right? I'm trying to give good advice while I'm going here. A lot of people think about coal-fired coal-fired power plants, or, the big old-fashioned fired power plants. A lot of people think about nuclear. A lot of people think about green stuff today, like solar panels and windmills, the windmills cost more to make than they actually generate in electricity over the lifetime of them, by the way. That's a fact, been proven outright many, many times. But natural gas, a lot of power plants in the United States use natural gas to generate the heat to run the turbines. So those of you who use central air and central heat need to be aware your gas bill is about to go like this. Your electric bill is going to go like this, because the more they have to pay for the natural gas to run them turbines to generate that steam, the higher your electric bill is going to have to go. All right. Propaganda and rhetoric. I'm hearing things now that I heard back before the Iraq war. I'm just saying. I can't believe, it's like being in a time loop for somebody my age. I'm hearing the same lies, the same brandings, the same dehumanization that I did back before the Iraq war. I mean, they started that stuff back in like 96, 95. They were building up that the Iraqis were inhuman and, blah, 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 and evil and this and that and the other. They started that in 95, 96. But here we go. This is all we're hearing on the Western shite stream media. So if you're not from the United States, you probably haven't heard it. They're killing babies and chopping their heads off. How many times have we heard that crap? The only time I've seen babies killed and women eviscerated was the IDF footage that they shot and accidentally got released on the internet. They shot a pregnant woman right in the belly. That's IDF, not Iran. They're making nuclear bombs. They've been making nuclear bombs for 2,000 years, apparently. Apparently, they found a scroll somewhere in the desert that said that Iran was planning to make a nuclear bomb. When in fact, if you just actually paid any attention to what the statements were from the mediator and the actual paperwork, instead of listening to Western shite stream, I call them shite stream because whenever they open their mouths, it's a stream of shite that comes out. But anyway, apparently they found a new Dead Sea Scroll somewhere that said that Iran's been planning to make a nuclear bomb since back then. Anyway, so there's all the same lies, war propaganda. I'm surprised we haven't heard that the Iranians are blowing up incubators. Okay? Did you realize that incubator story goes all the way back to World War II? I'm just asking, do y'all realize that that incubator story was one of the things that they used during World War II? But anyway, the war propaganda is flying, you know. And I'll go back to what I said. The only person that I have seen actually harm a pregnant woman was the IDF. They shot her in the belly. And the guy on the video says two with one shot. That's what we're dealing with. That's the kind of psychopathy we have to deal with. All right. Back to what I said last night, if you didn't hear it. If you repeat the lie often enough, it becomes a quasi-truth. If you repeat that quasi-truth long enough, it becomes a belief. Then it becomes a dogma, and men will die for it. Now, what we have is our representatives in the West, specifically Washington, D.C., saying that they will go until there's no one left to say uncle. They intend to kill so many people in Iran that there's no one left to surrender. They've said it openly. All right. Let's see. Claims of evacuation made by our governments, especially the United States and Washington, D.C., claims of evacuation cannot be true. Right? Two reasons. There's no airlines, no transportation. The second thing is we found out that the embassies did not keep their lists maintained. When you travel overseas, you register with your foreign embassy. If you're going to be there for any amount of time, they know your phone number and your location. All right? And your place of work if you're working. So the embassy is required to maintain a list of all of its, in this case, let's say Americans. They're required to maintain a list of all Americans in the nation. They're required to know how to contact them and where they're at and where they're working. All right. Our embassies didn't maintain the civilian lists. So even if people wanted out, they're not going to get out. And there's no airplanes to take them out. All right. While I'm talking about that, let me find the other piece that I had on this. If you call an embassy and you're in one of the Gulf states, it says call this number, right? You remember Rubio getting on TV and saying, if you're over there, call this number. Here's the message that you get. Please do not rely upon the United States government for assisted departure or evacuation at this time. There are currently no United States evacuation points. Both Trump and Rubio said that they were doing everything that they could to evacuate American citizens. Call this number. Please do not rely on the United States government for assisted departure or evacuation. At this time, there are currently no U.S. evacuation points. That's the message they're getting. I don't like liars, and I will point out the lies all day long. Back to what I said over here. There are no air flights, and there's no embassy lists. If you have no flights leaving and you have no embassy lists of American people on the ground in that country, how are you going to evacuate them? You don't even know where to find them. And then they send this out. Call this number. Please do not rely on the United States government. We have no evacuation points. Just lie after lie after lie. I can't stand liars. All right. So let's see. Where am I at? U.S. troops would be on a suicidal mission. if they tried to invade Iran. That's from a former general who was a planner. Um, and they, it's just, that's what he said. Modi, you know, the guy that's in Israel, or I should say Israel, right? Modi, the person who is in charge of India. First things first, you need to understand about Modi, and I've said this before, I'll say it again. Modi is a British educated Indian. He is not an Indian, he is a British Indian. That makes a huge difference. He's also connected to Epstein. Duh. Directly connected to Epstein. Right? Also, he was just in Israel. He was just in Israel having a great time with Bibi Melikowski. So if anybody thinks that Modi is going to uphold any of his agreements or is going to go against the United States, back to Modi, if anybody thinks that Modi in India is going to go against the United States or Israel, they don't understand who Modi is. First of all, Modi is one of the biggest Zionists and is surrounded by the largest population of Zionists in India. He's British educated, and he was just in the British Protectorate of Palestine visiting with Bibi Melikowski before this all started. All right, so that explains him. Next, I'm going as fast as I can, y'all. I do not feel good. Let me get a drink. Herbal tea today instead of coffee. Okay. Iran. They have reserve supplies. Everybody keeps saying Iran is running out of missiles and drones, and they don't have blah, 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 right? Everybody keeps telling you this in the Western media. That is completely untrue. Iran has been preparing for this for 30 years. Okay? They have reserve supplies. They can build hundreds of drones a day underground. They can build hundreds of missiles per week underground. And that's just what they told us. And that's just what has been reported by other nations. All right. I have no idea. They could build 1,000 drones a day for all I know. I imagine that would be difficult. But based on intelligence, Iran can continue to build hundreds of drones per day. And we don't know how many facilities they have. If they've got 7 facilities, that's 700 drones a day. Same thing with hundreds of missiles per week. They have everything in-house to assemble them. All right. If they can build 100 missiles per week in one facility, what if they have 7 of them? And they supplied in-house already. So it's not like they got to go chase it. Right. They already have the materials and the facilities in place to do it. They've had 30 years to plan it. I just said that. Especially since they started with the invasion of the United States into Iraq. That's how long they've been working at this. Solidly. All right. They've known. Why would they start planning all this and start doing all this back with the invasion of Iraq? I'll go back to what I said about Cheney. Cheney in 2005 said that Iraq was next. Wes Clark with his list that he gave, the 7 countries. All right. And I need to also point out that in the Bush memoir, which I unfortunately read, thank God I can speed read instead of wasting all my time. But, George Bush II, the one that stood on the deck and said mission accomplished while everybody was being blown up in Iraq. The Bush memoir said that they intended to attack Iran as early as 2008. They were going to attack Iran on the way out. That's in his memoirs. Don't take my word for it. Look at his book. Or type it in. Did George Bush say that we intended to attack Iran in 2008 in his book? Don't believe or disbelieve me. I never asked anybody to. All right. So, Russians. Let's see. What do I got going here? On Azerbaijan. I keep telling you I'll dig into it. On Azerbaijan, 3% of the population. All right. That's it. For the separatists, 3%. They could actually have a civil war. But Azerbaijan has been moving equipment towards the Iranian border. Russia is not going to put up with that. I can tell you right now. It's just not going to happen. And you have to remember, Russia is mad because Azerbaijan massacred the Armenians who were being given shelter. They were refugees. Azerbaijan, they were being given shelter. They were refugees, and Azerbaijan attacked them, the Armenians. You can look that up. And Russia's been mad ever since. Okay. Something to point out is because of all the attacks because of the carpet bombing in Lebanon on the Christian districts in Lebanon, the Christian militias in Lebanon have joined Hezbollah against the BPIP, British Protectorate in Palestine. Um, the has the housing party, everybody keeps saying that it was Iran that hit Cyprus. The housing party in the UK said it was Israel. The Royal Air Force in England said it was not from Iran. It was 100% an Israeli drone that hit Cyprus. All right. I need to point out that with regard to Iran, one of the Knesset members, I couldn't get his name because I just couldn't say it. One of the Knesset members said, extermination is acceptable. All right. One of the clerics said, you put down animals. That's what people in the British Protectorate are saying about Iranians. Extermination is acceptable, and you just put down animals. The Saudis and the UAE are allowing airspace and facilities I'm not sure about, but they have been targeted. The UAE had a airfield that they flew American equipment out of, and it got hit. All right. What did Iran say? If you allow the Americans to use your facilities, they're fair game. Which, if you were a country that was under attack, you would eliminate every possibility for somebody to attack you, wouldn't you? NATO, they want Russia to talk. Russia guarantees a response on Iran, right? And what they said is any member of the Gulf states that attacks Iran is fair game. They said Iran attacks in defense after unprovoked attack, right? Yet in the United States, they're saying that Iran's attacks in defense of themselves after an unprovoked attack is proof that they're terrorists. Two completely different statements, right? Okay. AI-driven warfare. That's something that I wanted to bring up. And if I have already, I don't remember saying it. Okay, so what we have is we have AI-driven warfare. It's the Lavender program. All right, from Palantir in Gaza, in Syria, in Lebanon, and now Iran. And here's the thing: they set the preset parameters, and if they want to kill one person, and they say it's okay to kill 5,000 to get that one person, they will kill 5,000 to get that one person. All right. It's inaccurate. Its accuracy is a complete lie. The programming dictates what it does. The crimes should fall on those people using the AI, like the British Protectorate and its commanders and its leadership. AI is no excuse for war crimes. AI is no excuse for genocide. AI is no excuse for crimes against humanity. Right? I need to also point out, I found the quote, B.B. Malachowski believes that it is his job to bring the return of their Messiah. Those were his words, not mine. I don't know if it's Ball or Marduk or who, but do you remember all the ball gates? I mentioned this the other day, all the ball gates that were set all over the planet. They say it's okay if we kill everybody because then it'll just make it come back quicker. And it's okay to destroy everything. That is very strictly Sabbatine Frankish thought patterns, okay? I need to point out that these same people, the Shabbat, do y'all remember the Shabbat in New York City where they found the tunnels with the blood-stained mattresses underneath it? Do y'all remember that? And they were crawling out the alley? That's the Shabbat. That's the Zionist group. I'm just saying. Shabbat, which is a Zionist group, they're the ones that were crawling out of the tunnels underneath their synagogue where they found blood-stained mattresses, which they tried to cover up very, very quickly. But I want to remind you who these people are. Okay, another lie. The White House did not evacuate, or I'm sorry, the White House didn't evacuate everybody, but they did evacuate a Trump advisor and a TikTok Zionist mouthpiece on a private jet. They couldn't get American citizens and workers out of there, but they could get his advisor and a Zionist paid. Remember, they spent $500 million for TikTok representatives and YouTube people to create the speech that they want. This one here that flew out on a private jet is one of those. Do you realize that OnlyFans and Pornhub, anybody, I don't care. I don't care if you use OnlyFans and Pornhub. I really don't. But here's the thing. You need to find out who's financing it. Because what I found out about OnlyFans and Pornhub is all the money that goes through that they don't take for profit goes back to the British Protectorate of Palestine. All right? So I would say don't use either of those, and make sure that you research the others so that you know that you're not putting money in their hands. That page is done. I'm going as fast as I can, y'all. Next, Lebanon civilians are fighting the IDF. Literally, they tried to go into a village, and a woman was out taking care of her livestock. You know, you do that in the middle of the night. If you've never lived on a farm, you don't understand. You have these, you don't sleep regular patterns. You go to sleep, you get up and you check on your livestock and take care of what you need to. You sleep for another few hours, you go out and check on them. Then you sleep for a few hours and you go out in the morning. Anybody that lives on a farm knows this, right? Well, a lady went out and found the IDF trying to sneak through dressed as Lebanese medical personnel. They even painted their equipment. She started shooting at them. They killed her. Well, of course, her sons heard what was going on, come out and started shooting at them too. The whole village repelled a unit of the IDF. Of course, then they flew back in there with aircraft and used RPGs to blow the village apart. But a couple of days later, they tried to go in again to get their equipment. And guess what? They got repelled by civilians, not Hezbollah, not Lebanese military, civilians. That's how mad. And you want to hear the really funny thing? It's a Christian village. All right. Exchange of energy attacks. That's part of the headline for this one. I said oil burning and water evaporated, right? The United States and the British Protectorate in Palestine have attacked oil and other financial centers in Iran. And by financial, I mean like natural resources, large industrial bases. And in exchange, Iran hit Haifa's oil refinery and a few others. Why? Because they said they would. You hit ours, we'll hit yours. Now, unfortunately, they have turned Tehran into a nightmare between, and I'll get to that here in a minute. But anyway, so the U.S. bases in Kuwait that were being used have been hit multiple times. They told the Kuwaitis, if you allow Americans to fly off of that, we're going to hit it. They continued to allow Americans to fly out of there, and they hit it. So far, though, it's only British Protectorate or U.S. assets that have been hit in Kuwait. All right. If Kuwait continues to do what they're doing, then Iran will consider Kuwait an enemy combatant. Because if you allow an unprovoked attack to be taking place from your landmass, then you're a participant. You're not a standby. You're not a what do they call it? A spectator. Speaking of spectators, I got to interrupt this thing for a very important message. Go Lady Braves! State finals again, three years in a row. Any of you who listen to me and want to support some very, very amazing young ladies, you can Cherokee Lady Braves on any of your social platforms. Cheer on. The amount of adversity that these ladies have to go through just to get through to the playoffs, let alone to the championships. I mean, think about it. They're Native Americans. The amount of adversity and racism that they've had to deal with over the years, and especially the last couple of years. I know you don't want to hear this, but if you happen to find the Cherokee Lady Braves on any of your social platforms, please cheer them on. They got a championship game this week. Now, back to the messages. Lebanon was declared a failed state by the British Protectorate in Palestine. They say that they have the right to take over any land in Lebanon that they want. And the Lebanese council just stood by and did nothing. I want you to understand this. I'm going to say it again. Lebanon has been declared a failed state by the British Protectorate in Palestine, open to IDF invasion, takeover by the British Protectorate in Palestine, which means they want to take all of Lebanon into their holdings. But the Hezbollah, the Shia, and the Christian populations have united. All right. And here's the other thing you need to understand. The Christian militias and the Shia have lived peacefully, except for when the British Protectorate of Palestine has interfered. So now what you have in Lebanon is you have the British Protectorate in Palestine saying it's a failed nation, and they have the right to take it over. And you have Christians and Shia and Hezbollah, and probably soon the Lebanese military are not going to tolerate this. So Hezbollah attacks are increasing daily, even though you're not seeing it in the news. Let me go back to what I said. The British Protectorate in Palestine will put you in jail for 14 years if you reveal anything. If you show footage, if you take pictures, you get 14 years in prison if you put it online where people can see it. Okay? So there's that. I'm hoping this light will hold up long enough for me to finish this. Okay, next. The Iranian cluster ammunition that all the Western media is railing and raving about. Okay, there's two different kinds of cluster munition. If you've been in the United States military and you've seen our cluster munition, they're like little butterflies that sink down to the ground, okay? And they're supposed to explode. They bounce. Sometimes you have something called a bouncing Betty where they bounce, and when they go up, they explode. Problem with that kind of ordnance is it doesn't always detonate, all right? That is a true cluster weapon, a cluster bomb, a cluster missile, whatever you want to call it. A true cluster bomb, you got two different kinds. You got the bouncing Betties, they hit the ground, bounce up, and then they explode all over the place. Or you have the ones that when they hit, they explode. The problem is they don't always explode. The ones that the Iranians are using are actually projectiles. So when it breaks open, the projectiles launch downward, and they are designed to always explode. Now, if one of them doesn't detonate, it's not by design. It's not a design flaw. Okay, it's a problem with that specific ordinance. Whereas the ones that the United States and Europe have used for a long time illegally, they are known to not detonate, and they have used them because it causes mass casualties amongst the civilians. All right, another war crime that's been going on for years. But there's two different kinds. You've got cluster bombs, and then you have what the Iranians are using, which are very different. These are actually propelled. And they're designed for maximum detonation. Does that excuse it? No. But don't confuse the two, because what the Iranians have been using does not qualify as a cluster munition according to war powers. All right. Let me get me a light here. You'll see me. Let's see. And besides that, before I forget, Iran didn't sign the treaty against cluster munitions. I mean, call it what you like, but they're not signatories. And I already explained how they'd explode differently. Now, the murdered Ayatollah specifically required, and this you can go back and check, but the murdered Ayatollah specifically required that these munitions that they're using that have these clusters of 80 and 100 bomblets would not endanger somebody after the fact. So if it doesn't detonate, it won't detonate, unlike our cluster bombs. Our cluster bombs, if you hit it, it detonates. Whereas the ones that they've designed that drop 70 to 100 bomblets, if they don't detonate, unless you intentionally go over there and hit the detonator, it's not going to blow up. All right. For Westerners, I got to explain the Ayatollah to you. Most Westerners have seen Star Wars, right? Think about Obi-Wan Kenobi standing there and sacrificing himself, right? So that he would gain more power and he would energize people, right? Because he's died. Doesn't mean you won't grieve him, but it energizes you. Well, the death of the Ayatollah is the same. He refused to hide. He refused to take shelter that was unavailable to the rest of the people. And he knew that he would likely be assassinated. As a martyr, that Ayatollah gained more influence than if he had remained alive. Hegseth, we will show no mercy. That's his words, not mine. Hegseth says, we will show no mercy. We don't need no stupid rules of engagement. We're not going to abide by any stupid rules of engagement, was the other way he said it. There's no need to abide by treaties, conventions, or charters. This is the Secretary of War saying that we don't need to do any of these. Well, you know what? If the United States doesn't abide by the treaties, conventions, and charters, then the enemies don't have to either. He is intentionally endangering our troops, and that's not acceptable. This attitude, by the way, kill them. They will die under our bombs, is another thing that he said. This attitude endangers all people in all conflicts on all continents. Because if the United States can ignore treaties, conventions, and charter rules, then no other country on the planet has to abide by them. Next, I'm going as fast as I can. Let me get another drink. Anyway, I'm trying to go as fast as I can. I'll get this done as quick as I can for y'all. I know your time's as valuable as mine. All right, next. The Kurdish leadership going to join the United States. Heck no. He said that there should be a diplomatic solution. Got to remember, in 2003 in Iraq, they killed him. They sacrificed him. You also have to remember that the United States gave Saddam Hussein VX and other chemical weapons, mustard components, to use on the Kurds and the Iranians. All right. He also said, the Kurdish leader also said that troops on the ground is ridiculous in the space the size of Western Europe. How many times have you heard me say that? They also have a Turkey issue, right? The Kurdish, that is. But there are many billboard in the British Protectorate of Palestine that has Trump and Huckleberry, Huckleberry, the ambassador, on it, that says this is a holy war on Iran. And that Trump is the greatest president that the British Protectorate in Palestine ever had. It's actually there. Look it up. It's a billboard in the British Protectorate that says this is a holy war on Iran, and that Trump is the greatest president that the British Protectorate in Palestine ever had. Okay, I've already mentioned Palantir. Lavender's being used in the Middle East. It's off the Gotham platform. They require the data centers in order to work. That's the reason why the Iranians are attacking the data centers. Everybody says, why are they the Iranians are attacking the data centers. The reason why the Iranians are attacking the data centers is the only way that the Lavender platform, the Gotham platform, can work is if it has enough data centers. Iran knows this. They're taking out the data centers. Which reminds me, you realize that they're wanting to put Palantir Gotham program in the United States. It allows total control and eliminates resistance. Just pointing that out. For the religious part of this aspect, I'll get to it here in a minute. This is not an isolated war anymore. It's going global, and it's going global very quickly. And here's the problem. What happens over there is going to result in the attack on my individuality, your individuality, our independence, our self-determination, and our right to have our own thoughts. Remember Plato's cave? I did a song called Shadows on the Wall. Well, what we're seeing right now is the shadows on the wall, not the real puppeteers that are pushing the issue, right? The people that are watching the shadows are getting all the theater of consciousness, but they're not paying attention to the people behind the scenes that are actually running the strings. No war has been fought that my sons didn't approve of in finance. That's Mama Rothschild. And the Rothschilds just happen to be what? Sabbatine Frankists that are Zionists. Zionism in our military is a psychological illness. And it's deadly. It's a deadly psychopathy. I'm just saying. The United States military is incapable of doing its constitutional duty of taking care of the domestic terrorists in this country because it is infested with Zionism. How's that for stating a fact? Let's see, where's the notes that I skipped? I'm looking for the note that I skipped that I would get back to. Okay, that's not. Next, I'm going as fast as I can, y'all. I'm literally getting chilled at this point, and it's not from the air. They attacked the water desalination plant that eliminated the water for 30 villages, which is another war crime. The United States and the British Protectorate in Palestine have set the precedent. This is what the minister from Iran said. The minister of Iran said that the United States and the British Protectorate in Palestine have set the precedent, not Iran. The same with oil, civilian oil storage. There are Americans who have been taken prisoner. The United States claimed that some of them were killed in action. The truth will be outed. Qatar is seeking a de-escalation after assisting the United States. The U.S. Is putting their civilians industry infrastructure in jeopardy. The British Protectorate in Palestine says the UAE hit Iranian water, but the UAE says that the British Protectorate in Palestine lied, and it could be either. However, it has been proven that it was the British Protectorate in Palestine and or the United States that hit the water. They tried to blame it on the UAE in order to stir up more crap, just like they keep shooting drones into Turkey, and just like it was their drone that hit Cyprus. The Epstein Gates email is something that I want to bring up right now. How do we get rid of the poor in the Middle East, in Africa, and South America? We could unalive them. We could attack their water supply all around. Or we could get them to kill each other. That's an email that Epstein and Bill Gates shared, okay? How do we get rid of the poor in the Middle East, Africa, and South America? We could just unalive them. Injections. Or we could attack their water supply all around. Or we could just get them to kill each other. People don't understand how connected Epstein and all this stuff is to it. We went from having a 3 to 4 day war to having a 2-week war to having a 4-week war to having a 100 days war to now they're saying it might take until September. Now, on the Western media, they keep saying it's over. It's done. No. If you actually look at what's being said, they're talking about going until September. Okay? The Western propaganda, I got to go back and revisit. They're saying that the clerics are dead. Not true. They're saying that all the leadership in Iran are dead and all their generals are dead. Not true. They've got 2 and 3 or 4 more tiers left to go. Okay? In some places, they got 5 and 6 tiers built up. You want to kill 5 tiers? They still got another one waiting. And by the time you get to that 6th tier, they're going to have a 7th one ready. And everyone that you kill, every group of down the line that you kill, you're just making the next one less sympathetic. But anyway, so the Western media is saying that the clerics are all dead, and they're saying that the leadership is dead, and they're saying that Iran blew up its own schools. You know, they're saying, oh, well, the Iranians hit their own school. That one. What they're not mentioning is that they have hit 19 schools, 13 hospitals, and one school after they hit it, they waited for the rescuers to get there, and then they double tapped the school. That's what our war criminals are doing. They waited, not only have they, let me go back to what I said, 19 schools have been hit, not one. The one that everybody's talking about, they found that that was a Tomahawk missile. That means that, unfortunately, the United States was given bad trajectory. By who? The British Protectorate. That's what they do. They kill kids, they blow up schools and hospitals, and they double tap. Anyway, and it's sickening to see our military doing it. But, back to what I said. They've hit 19 schools, 13 hospitals, and that one hospital yesterday evening, they hit the school yesterday, and they waited until rescuers got there, and then they hit it again. That's called a double tap. That's also a war crime. The Kurds, quote unquote, under threat by the United States and the British Protectorate of Palestine, told the United States to bug off. I'm using nice terms. Okay? They're back to this other rhetoric about the baby killings and bombing civilians and cruelty and cutting women open and beheading people. I'll go back to what I said. The only video I've ever seen of somebody shooting a pregnant woman in the belly was an IDF soldier shooting a pregnant woman in the belly in Palestine. And then he shot her son in the head too. He was about 6 or 7. Okay. Spec Ops were sent in to, they're talking about sending Spec Ops in to retrieve the nuclear stockpile. All right. But here's the problem with sending Spec Ops in. You got to know the locations. You got to have experts to handle it. You got to have transportation, and then you got to have containers, and then you got to have a way to lift it out. In the middle of a population of 93 million? Not going to happen. Not going to happen. You know, if it was one weapon like we used to go after, or 2 weapons like we used to go after, we would go get it. It wouldn't require much. We could go in undercover and retrieve it and get it out. But the people who had it wasn't a whole country. They were generally terrorists or weapons dealers. So to go get a nuclear weapon or nuclear material and retrieve it wasn't that difficult. And I say again, it was the Marines and the Air Force and the Navy and the Army that made sure we got in and out safe in some places. But we're not talking about going into a weapons dealers and taking something. We're talking about going into a country that has 93 million people. It has a 1,000,000-man standing army, and I have no idea. I haven't been able to find how many reservists they have. They have a 1,000,000-man standing army. You're not going to go in there and get 400 kilos of material out. It's not going to happen. I have heard, and Lindsey Graham is a creep. But anyway, Lindsey Graham says, oh, this is going to be great because we're going to take all their oil and we're going to make trillions. That's what Lindsey Graham's saying. But he says we can kill as many as we need to get it. All right. But anyway, they said we can either destroy all the oil production or take it. Cog Island, 90% of Iranian oil goes out through there. All right. But Lindsey Graham says that we can make $10 or $15 trillion if we steal it. The United Nations is talking about unsanctioning Russian natural gas and oil. Do you know what the Russians said? No. Just pointing that out to y'all. Okay. I said yesterday, but I got to confirm, the Houthis are preparing to block the Red Sea. As soon as I'm telling you what, the United States is trying to send a carrier group down through the Suez Canal right now. You know, the Zeus Canal. It was built in the time of Zeus. Anyway, the United States is trying to send a carrier group through the Suez Canal, and the Houthis are preparing to block the Red Sea. It's confirmed. You know, I intimated it yesterday, but it is confirmed. They intend to, and I will be surprised if that carrier group gets through unscathed. The U.S. British Protectorate in Palestine are homicidal maniacs in charge. Isn't that crazy? Now, this is what other diplomats are saying about Trump and Hegseth and Rubio and Bibi Malakowski. The United States and the British Protectorate in Palestine have homicidal maniacs in charge. Now, if we have diplomats saying this openly, that is an issue. Okay, if the Saudis join the United States, Yemen has said that they will respond and destroy Saudi Arabia. I want you to understand this. If the Saudis actively join the United States and the British Protectorate in Palestine, the Yemenis have said they will respond and destroy Saudi Arabia. You got to remember, for years they tried, Saudi Arabia, the United States, and others, UK included, tried to wipe out Yemen unsuccessfully. As a matter of fact, they had to retreat. Right? They have said if the Saudis decide that they're going to join the United States and the British Protectorate in Palestine, they will wipe Saudi Arabia out, starting with its oil. The son of the Ayatollah is the new Ayatollah, and I love this joke. You know, it took the United States 20 years to replace the Taliban with the Taliban, and it took Donald Trump 2 weeks to replace the Ayatollah Khamenei with the Ayatollah Khamenei. 2 weeks. That's a record. That's a record that will live forever. I have never been a supporter of Zionism, ever, okay? Because I've known their history. I just have. I've known their history all this time. My grandfather, the Irish one, always said that the Catholics the dark Israelis, he wasn't talking about the people from Palestine or the Arabs. He was talking about the dark Israelis, are evil from the same hell. But he always pointed out to me that Jews weren't Israelis. That's my Irish granddad. I eventually learned the difference between a Zionist and Torah-following Jews. Talmudic Zionists versus Torah-following Jews. And I've met both. But my granddad always differentiated. And he always said that the Catholics and the Zionists were the same people. And as I've studied for all this time, I realize they are. They're both from the lineage of Sabbatean Frankists and Ashkenazi. just like because they are Habsburgs, right? Anyway, somebody said that the apocalypse is upon the whole world, and I agree. The apocalypse is on the whole world because everything is being, what's apocalypse mean? It means it's being revealed. The apocalypse is upon the whole world, yes, because everything is being revealed and the people are still standing by quietly, not doing a thing. You know, silence is complicity. If you stand by and say nothing about genocide, like I have been for the last years, if you stand by and watch what's going on in Iran and say nothing, shame on you. Silence is complicity. I refuse to remain silent, and anybody that knows me knows that that's true. Now, let's talk about Nuremberg. The British Protectorate in Palestine has already been convicted of genocide and crimes against humanity, which means anybody who helps the British Protectorate in Palestine do those things, like the United States and England supplying weapons so that they can genocide more people in Palestine, is also guilty under the law. Nuremberg. Robert Jackson, you can look it up, don't take my word for it, but at the closing of the Nuremberg trials, Robert Jackson said, the crime of all crimes is genocide. That's Gaza. The supreme crime is unprovoked aggression. That's the attack on Iran. I explained why the United Nations and the EU is silent. I've also now explained why Modi is being a British East Indian Zionist is quiet, right? Everything that's being done right now is in violation of United Nations Charter and war conventions, right? The rumors of the end of the war are bullcrap because Iran is not going to stop. They're not going to stop, and I quote, Iran is not going to stop until the liberation of Palestine. That's their words, not mine. Iran is not going to cease this action until Palestine is liberated. The British Protectorate in Palestine is not going to stop. And if they don't, the United States isn't. You know why? Because they can't afford to stop. And besides that, the leaders and the Zionists that set this whole thing up have flown out of the British Protectorate, and they're just letting the regular people die. Anyway, quote unquote, it's time for Iran. It's time for something that Iran cannot imagine. It's time for destruction that they have never seen. Iran will get erased. We will kill them all. Leave nothing but the pieces that takes decades to recover and rebuild from. I'm quoting people here. A surprise that will totally destabilize Iran. I'll go back to what I said. The tactical nuclear. They're talking about using a tactical nuclear weapon on the Fordo Center in Iran. You know, that's where the nuclear material was. They're talking about using a tactical nuclear weapon on the Fordo Center in Iran. They're saying that it's possible that it will be a United States flight from the UK to deliver it, to deflect the blame from the British Protectorate in Palestine. Or it could be in conjunction with multiple small tactical weapons launched from the British Protectorate in Palestine on other facilities in Iran. They've already, I got to point out, before this thing even started, we knew that the British Protectorate in Palestine had already prepared and tubed their tanks. Now, I don't know if they were tactical or if they were low yield. All right. I don't know which, but we know that they already had them prepared in preparation and tubed. So the intention was evident from the beginning. And I find it ironic that that threat of having them already prepared and tubed is being ignored by Iran. Iran knows that they could get nuked, and they're not stopping. Okay, last page, y'all. Iran's oil facilities were struck. They were hit in the way that the air became toxic. You can't breathe the outdoor air without protection. Water filters have to be changed. The environmental destruction from hitting that oil refinery and that oil supply is on a scale as large as a nuclear meltdown. All right. I want you to understand that. What the United States and or the British Protectorate in Palestine did to hit that oil storage and refinery is on the same scale environmentally as a nuclear meltdown. Why? Because it has benzene, it has hydrochloric acid, it has sulfuric acid, SO2, and it's going to get into the soil and the water and the food. So what happens with this explosion that they did, they created a chemical weapon without having to deliver one. Okay, by attacking that plant right before it was going to rain. There's no accident in the timing. They hit that oil outside of Tehran right before a rainstorm was coming in. The timing is important. That shows that they intended to hit it. They intended to hit the oil outside of Tehran right as the rain was coming in. Why? Because all that in the air, acid rain, is going to wash down into Tehran. Okay? Now, here's the thing. Benzene. We already know about benzene if you're in the United States. The train derailment, benzene, massive explosion in cancers. Massive explosions in birth defects. This is a chemical weapon without having to actually deliver one. All right, next page. I'm going as fast as I can, y'all. I'm at an hour. Oman, always diplomatically neutral. They have been for decades. Oman has always been diplomatically neutral. They said the British protectorate in Palestine attacks are illegal and constitute the worst aggression in the region's history. This is from Oman, the ones that are usually really level-headed and pretty neutral. They said that the British protectorate in Palestine attacks are illegal and constitute the worst aggression in the region's history, other than the invasion of Iraq, by the way. Qatar and the Saudis allowed the United States to attack. I already mentioned that, so they are being hit. Russia was visited by the Gulf states' ambassadors. The ambassadors asked Russia to pressure Iran to stop attacking them. Russia answered them. You want us to pressure Iran? This is from their statement. Russia told the ambassadors from the Gulf states, like Saudi Arabia, Qatar, UAE, and all those people. Russia told them, you want us to pressure Iran. Has any one of you condemned America for killing 200 schoolgirls? Has anyone brought a resolution to the United Nations against the British protectorate in Palestine and America, the countries that started this war? That was their response to the Gulf states. You had nothing to say about 200 schoolgirls, and that's 200 schoolgirls is the minimum. They've destroyed 19 schools. But Russia, in response to the Gulf states, said, did you condemn them for killing them girls? Did you condemn them for starting the war? They're talking about using the Delta to go in and get the uranium. I already talked about that. But they're also talking about using Delta to go in and destroy oil fields. Well, I'm telling you right now, I would not want to land 30-man team in the middle of a 1 million-man army and civilians who are armed and pissed. Strategic errors, myself and a dozens warned about this and only to be ignored. Welcome to the hell they wanted for you. I'm just telling you. You think that the Zionists give a damn about you or me? Remember what I said about B.B. Malachowski's statement? The United States is a golden calf. We will suck it dry and chop it up and sell it off in pieces when there's nothing left but a welfare state. That's what Malachowski said about the United States. They don't care. This is the hell they want for you. $200 a barrel oil. Now you think about that. That's going to be 4 times your gas prices. Minimum. Let's see. What do I have next? I only got. I have to bring this up. I got a sense of humor. It's being called the Axis of the Axis. The United States and the British protectorate in Palestine and everybody who's helping them are being called the Axis of Epstein. Remember back in the day, the Axis of Powers? Well, today it's the Axis of Epstein. They're calling the Operation Epstein Fury. They're calling it the Campaign of the Cannibals. The Arabs are actually calling this the Campaign of the Cannibals. I don't know what they're referring to, except for the Epstein files. They're calling it the Pedophile Empire. They're calling the United States and the British protectorate in Palestine 2 pieces of the pedophile empire. That's what they think of our leadership. They're not talking about us. They're talking about our leaders. There's some people are saying it's the baby killers versus the world. They've obviously read the Epstein files when most of Americans haven't. They're called, and then I gotta go back to my favorite. I remember Vladimir Putin saying the vampire ball is over, right? One of the Iranian tankers was hit, so they hit 2 back. The Ba'athists, I got to remind you of something, all right? Way back during the Iraqi war, and this is something that most people don't know about the Iraqi war, but I am very familiar with. Way back during the Iraqi war, they had the Ba'athist Party, right? After the war, or during the war, they hunted them down and executed them in Iraq without a trial. They didn't put them on trial because they didn't want them revealing the VX gas and the chemical weapons and all the other things that the United States had done. So what they did is they sent in spec ops. They hunted them down throughout the Gulf states. As a matter of fact, some had escaped. But they hunted down the Ba'athist Party members and executed them so that they couldn't reveal the crimes of the United States. All right. People need to understand this is an existential war, and they need to understand what existential means. It means for survival. All right. Iran is literally in a battle for its survival. All these people keep saying that we'll just keep killing them until there's none left. We will kill them until there's nobody left to surrender. We will blow them to hell. If you were sitting in Iran and you heard Hegseth or Lindsey Graham or Trump say that we're going to blow you to hell, we're going to kill you until there's nobody left to surrender, what would you think? And then let's not talk about the Knesset member and the cleric in the British Protectorate that said they're all animals. You just put down animals. Extermination is acceptable. Same thing is going on with Russia that people don't realize. NATO has gradually pushed itself east, and the idea is to put weapons in place that can reach into Russia. That's the reason why Russia said no. And they went in and protected the Russian people that are in the Ukraine. Right? Okay. India's already cut its own throat. The British Protectorate of India will no longer be trusted by any of its treaty partners. Russia and China and the global south, Southeast Asia in general, is either going to have to do something now or they're going to have to do something later. If they wait until later, it's going to be much more expensive and much more deadly. They're seeking the defeat and destruction of the British Protectorate. The defeat and destruction of the British Protectorate in Palestine doesn't eliminate the problem. There are Zionists, millions of them, that have fled all over the planet. All right, and they're already infesting other nations. Look at our country, and they're in control of much of the United States and much of Europe. They have consistently pursued this agenda for the last 200 years. With fervor since the early 1900s and more since the 1960s. The nihilist supremacy ideology it's never going to cease to be a threat. We are better than everybody else, and if everybody else dies, that's fine. These are people that believe that a global thermonuclear war serves their God. They think that mass death and destruction of people and the creation that we live on is acceptable because God wants it. All right. I've warned for years that nihilism becomes annihilism. Nihilism, lack of self-worth, or overabundant self-worth, the willing to die for whatever, becomes annihilism, where they seek out to kill other people for decades. And they're based on beliefs. Last but not least, songs that are relevant today. Lunatic Fringe. I'm giving you a little bit of comedy to close this thing off with. Songs that are relevant today that come to mind. Lunatic Fringe. There's also a really good song called The Eve of Destruction. There's a song for Native Americans called Run to the Hills by Iron Maiden. I like The Sound of Silence by Disturbed. The problem that we have is we have radical religious systems, all right, religious extremists. We have them on the Muslim side, we have them on the Christian side. And it's nihilism and unnihilism disguised as God's will, all right? Nihilism disguised as God's will becomes unnihilism immediately, because it's okay to kill them because they don't believe like I do, right? You might want to listen to Can You Hear Me by Mike and the Mechanics. Next page. I said it before, I'll say it again. I feel like I'm in a horror movie time loop. I have experienced this in the 80s. I've experienced this in the 90s. I experienced this with the Iraqi war. Same everything. Same propaganda, same official statements, same lies that I heard back before the Iraq war. Some of them are actually worse. Lies this time. Um, Here's something that you need to also understand, that if the U.S. and the Iranians destroy each other in the Middle East, it actually serves the purpose of the British protectorate in Palestine. Because right now, the hegemony of the United States in that area is limited to the bases that we have access to. But if all of our bases are destroyed and we manage to destroy Iran's ability to be anything, it actually serves the British protectorate in Palestine, because they will be the sole power in the Middle East that has nuclear weapons. Don't forget what they said. The United States is a golden calf to be sucked dry, chopped up, and sold off in pieces after it's turned into a welfare state. That was B.B. Malachowski in 1999. I have covered everything that I need to cover. I have got to go in and get me a shower. I am so chilled. Anyway, I wanted to do this. If there's anything breaking between now and 10:30 tomorrow morning, I'm sorry I had to go late tonight. I have been not well. Okay, I'm still not well. But anyway, if there is anything that is breaking, really important, between now and 10:30 tomorrow morning, I will be on as long as I need to cover the breaking and the most relevant stuff between like 10:30 in the morning and 11:30 tomorrow. So that's 10:30 in the morning, American Eastern Standard Time. All right. I came to you on the level. I've been plumb with my words. I haven't hashed any words with you. And I'll leave you in the square every time. My agenda is to try to save humanity from this global insanity. Oh, that's the other thing I wanted to bring up. Do you know how infected our military is with Zionist beliefs? They believe that this war is to bring about Armageddon. That's the reason why I said, even though the Pentagon and the Joint Chiefs could order the arrest of all the people who are domestic terrorists and have committed treason, they're not going to, because it's been infested with this Zionist ideology. You know, I always said that radical religions were the worst. You got radical Islam and you got radical Christianity. And I actually did a gratuity. Hear me? I actually did a gratuity. I was paid to do the research and do a gratuity on the evangelical movement in the United States and its connections to Zionism. Okay, they gave me $3,500 for a 2-hour presentation because they considered that one of the greatest threats to global security. American Zionists and their affiliation with the British protectorate in Palestine. And I was glad to take the money and do the presentation. Anyway, Mahe and I favor nothing, missing nothing, broken nothing, absent from your lives that are needed. And you are what you are. I am what I am. That should be enough for all of us, right? Favor everybody.